the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape.
Welcome back to Real Talk Horror, the podcast where we dive deep into the twisted and eerie world of horror films with a focus on some of the most intriguing and innovative directors in the genre. I'm your host, Josh, and in this third episode of our series on Rob Zombie, we're going to be breaking down his gritty, grindhouse-inspired reimagining of Halloween. But before we get into that, let's take a moment here to catch you up on what we've covered so far in this series. Our first episode, we dug into House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie's debut film that introduced us to the horrifying Firefly family and set the stage for his chaotic, unapologetic approach to horror. We saw a fresh blend of grindhouse 70s exploitation-style cinema and dark comedy, creating a film that was as disturbing as it was entertaining. Then in the second episode, we explored The Devil's Rejects, Zombie's sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, which took his signature style and cranked it up even more to another unsettling level. We dove into the complexities of the Firefly family as anti-heroes and examined how Zombie built this terrifying and strangely sympathetic portrayal of people on the fringe of society. Now, in the third episode, we turn our attention to Halloween, the film that marked Zombie's entry into the world of reboots and remakes, specifically his bold reimagining of John Carpenter's iconic slasher classic. This episode kicks off the next chapter in the ongoing exploration of Zombie's contributions to the horror genre. As a musician turned filmmaker, Zombie has carved out a distinct niche for himself, combining his love for grindhouse aesthetics with modern horror sensibilities. He makes films that are raw, intense, and often disturbingly realistic, blending elements of both exploitation and psychological horror. Whether you love or hate his approach, there's no denying that Zombie's films feel like nothing else in the genre. Throughout this series, we're going to break down each of his films chronologically, and every episode will explore the themes, style, performances, and overall impact of each film. We'll offer both in-depth analysis and personal impressions, as well as tackle the bigger questions. What makes zombie films unique? How do they balance the line between paying homage to the genre roots while pushing into new territory? Stick around as we dive deep into Halloween and begin to answer some of these questions. Let's explore how Zombie reimagines a classic through his signature lens. Rob Zombie's Halloween is a bold and audacious reimagining of John Carpenter's 1978 classic, a film that changed the horror genre forever. This version, released on August 31st, 2007, Zombie's take on Michael Myers' story would prove to be one of the most divisive horror remakes in recent memory. For some, it was a refreshing and brutal retooling of a beloved icon, while for others it felt like betrayal of the eerie simplicity and tension that made Carpenter's original such a landmark film. Zombie's Halloween is far from just another remake. It's a complete rethinking of Michael Myers' origin and the forces that shape him into the unstoppable force of evil we know. The film stars Malcolm McDowell as Dr. Loomis, Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode, and Tyler Mane as the towering, silent Michael Myers. Unlike Carpenter's original, which kept much of Michael's backstory shrouded in mystery, Zombie opens up his version by giving us an intimate, disturbing look into Michael's troubled childhood. This isn't just a slasher film. It's an exploration of trauma, family dysfunction, and the impact of a broken home on a young mind. It asks chilling questions. What drives someone to become a force of pure evil? The movie begins with a brutal, raw portrayal of Michael as a child, offering a glimpse into the hellish environment in which he was raised. Zombie uses his backstory to explore themes of abuse, neglect, and the psychological scars left by an environment steeped in violence and despair. Michael's descent into madness is portrayed with brutal realism, and it feels less like a slasher film and more like an unsettling study of what happens when the cycle of violence is allowed to continue unchecked. We witness the traumatic events that mold him into the iconic figure of death, creating a more humanized version of Michael, a stark contrast to this nearly mythic, silent killer that Carpenter's film presented. As the story transitions to the familiar territory of Halloween, the focus shifts to an adult Michael, now a hulking, silent figure, played by Tyler Mane. This version of Michael is terrifying because of his murderous rampage, but also because of his palpable sense of inevitability that surrounds him. The film brings us back to Haddonfield, where Michael returns to his own stopping grounds to continue his spree. But now there is a far more personal, human element to the action. Zombies' Michael is not just a monster. He's the product of environment, a living embodiment of the dysfunction and horror that shaped him. Zombies' Halloween is a darker, more violent version of the slasher genre. While Carpenter's Halloween was known for its atmospheric tension and its restraint in showing violence, Zombie cranks that dial to 11, focusing on the brutality of Michael's actions and the decay of American suburbia. The film presents a picture of a world where Michael can thrive in the most unexpected places, right under the surface of a seemingly quiet suburban town. Family breakdowns, societal neglect, and psychological trauma are at the core of this reimagining, emphasizing the notion that evil doesn't always come from outside. It's cultivated within, born from the environment in which a person grew up. However, this darker approach didn't come without its share of controversy. Halloween was divisive among critics and audiences alike. Some praised Zombie's willingness to push the boundaries of violence and psychological depth, while others felt the film strayed too far from the original's minimalist horror. Carpenter's Halloween was a masterclass in building tension with a slow burn approach, relying on suspense and atmosphere rather than explicit gore. Zombie, on the other hand, introduces a chaotic energy, with his signature grittiness and a tendency to overemphasize violence and shock. This change in direction sparked debates on whether it was necessary to give Michael Myers a backstory in the first place. Some felt that the mystery and unknowable nature of Michael made him far more terrifying, while others embraced Zombie's exploration of his character, finding the added depth fascinating. In terms of production, Zombie's Halloween is as rough and raw as you would expect from a director known for his unfiltered approach to filmmaking. The film has a distinctly chaotic, documentary-like feel, with its saturated colors, frantic pacing, and grim portrayal of the world Michael inhabits. The aesthetics feel as violent and uncomfortable as the story itself, amplifying the impact of the film's more shocking moments. The reception of this version was mixed. Some fans loved the fresh take, others felt it lacked the subtlety and atmosphere of the original. The debate around remakes and reboots was reignited, with Zombies Halloween serving as a case study in what works and what doesn't when taking on a beloved classic. As we dive deeper into this film, we'll explore how Zombies' reimagining of Halloween challenges convention, redefines concepts of horror icons, and gives us a new lens which to view Michael Myers, all while stirring up controversy and sparking new conversations in the horror community. But don't worry, we're just getting started, and we'll keep this spoiler-free for now. Let's get into the heart of this brutal, provocative film. Let's dive into the heart of Zombies Halloween. Its themes, style, characters, and overall impact. This is where we can really unpack what makes this film stand apart from other iterations of the Halloween franchise, as well as from the broader horror genre. At the core of Zombies, Halloween is a raw, unflinching exploration of family and violence, themes that permeate throughout the film and serve as the driving force behind Michael Myers' transformation into the iconic monster. Zombie doesn't simply offer a depiction of Michael as an unkillable force of evil. Instead, he humanizes the character by showing us the trauma and suffering that shaped him. Through a deeply unsettling portrayal of Michael's childhood, the film asks the hard-hitting questions. What truly drives a person to become evil? Can we trace the roots of violence back to a broken family, to neglect and abuse? Michael's relationship with his mother, Deborah, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, is central to understanding his descent into darkness. While Zombie never excuses his actions, there's a sense of tragedy in his backstory, as the film dives into the emotional toll that family dysfunction and abandonment take on him. His mother's attempt to shield him from his abusive father and the chaotic world around him ultimately fail, leaving Michael in a void where violence becomes his only means of expression. The tension between Michael and his sister Judith further deepens his trauma. Her indifference and cruelty create a sense of abandonment that only exacerbates his fragile mental state. Zombie doesn't just show us violence in Halloween, he forces us to confront it. The film is brutal, not shying away from the harsh realities of abuse and its long-lasting effects on the psyche. The violence Michael inflicts on others feels not only horrific, but also grounded in a sense of inevitability, like a creature created by the very environment he grew up in. This depiction of violence is a far cry from the stylized, often bloodless killings seen in Carpenter's version. In Zombie's world, violence is visceral and painful, and it leaves lasting scars on both the victims and the perpetrators. This rawness extends to the depiction of American suburbia, a place often seen as a symbol of safety and comfort, yet here it becomes a breeding ground for decay and corruption. Zombies Haddonfield isn't the idyllic small town it was in Carpenter's film. Instead, it's a place marred by neglect and dysfunction, a setting where evil isn't an outside force, but something that festers within the confines of the home. The film suggests that the rot of American society is often hidden in plain sight, just beneath the surface of seemingly quiet neighborhoods. It's a chilling commentary on the breakdown of traditional family structures and how these fissures create spaces where the seeds of violence and evil can thrive. Moving beyond the thematic depth, let's talk about Zombie's style, which is arguably one of the most distinct aspects of his filmmaking. His visual approach to Halloween is gritty and intense, creating a sense of discomfort right from the opening scene. The film is saturated with a bleak, oppressive color palette that reflects the darkness of the world it's portraying. The grimy, worn-down look of the settings, from the decaying walls of Michael's childhood home to the seedy, grimy feel of Haddonfield, works perfect in tandem with the film's narrative, amplifying that sense of unease. It's as if the world of Halloween is a place where hope has long since evaporated, leaving only violence and despair. Zombie's chaotic editing style further enhances his sense of brutality. The pacing is often frantic, with quick cuts that mirror the chaotic mental state of Michael himself. At times, the camera feels almost erratic, capturing a sense of instability that mirrors the psychological fractures within the characters. There's a stark contrast to Carpenter's methodical and deliberate pacing, but it works within the context of Zombie's darker, more explosive take on the story. The use of jump cuts, frenetic camera movements, and disorienting framing all contribute to the sense of discomfort, making us feel as though we're being pulled into the madness rather than observing it from a distance. When it comes to characters and performances, Zombie brings a fresh depth to the familiar figures of the Halloween franchise. Michael Myers, played by Taylor Maine, is no longer just a silent, stoic figure lurking in the shadows. Zombie's Michael is a towering, hulking presence, physically imposing, yet emotionally damaged. Maine brings a physicality to the role that makes Michael's silent rampage even more terrifying. But he also brings a sense of vulnerability to the character. There's a tortured soul beneath the mask. A boy who never had a chance to grow into anything other than a monster. Laurie Strode, portrayed by Scout Taylor Compton, takes on a more substantial role in this version of the story. She's no longer the innocent victim caught up in Michael's rampage. She's a character with her own depth, struggling with her own family's dysfunction. Taylor Compton gives Laurie a real emotional complexity, making her not just a final girl, but a fully realized person who's forced to contend with a past she didn't even know she had. Her journey from innocence to survival feels earned, and her eventual confrontation with Michael is even more impactful because of it. And then there's Dr. Loomis, played by Malcolm McDowell, a role made iconic by Donald Pleasance in the original. McDowell brings a different kind of energy to the character, one that's more cynical and jaded. His version of Loomis is no longer the patient, concerned doctor we see in Carpenter's film. Instead, he's a man obsessed with the monster he helped create. His portrayal of Loomis is someone deeply conflicted and morally gray, and it adds another dimension to the story. And his arc is one of the more compelling aspects of the film. As far as strengths go, Zombies Halloween excels in creating a sense of dread and unease. The film's atmosphere is thick with tension, thanks to the combined efforts of Zombies' direction, the stark cinematography, and that haunting minimalist score that echoes Carpenter's iconic themes while adding some more visceral and aggressiveness to the edge. The performances are also a highlight, with standout turns from Taylor Compton, Maine, and McDowell. The exploration of family trauma is compelling, and it gives the film some emotional depth that's often lacking in traditional slasher fare. However, the film is not without its weaknesses. While Zombie's approach is undeniably bold and distinct, it sometimes feels like he's overindulging in the violence and the gritty realism, to the point where the pacing can drag and the tension is lost in favor of shock value. The film's reliance on brutal, unrelenting violence can be exhausting at times, and it may feel it sacrifices the suspense and mystery that made the original Halloween so effective. The film also dives deeper into Michael's backstory, which, while interesting, isn't really necessary. The mystery surrounding Michael's origins was one of the key elements that made him terrifying, and seems just overboard here, giving him all the extra and a reason why he is. It takes some of that fear out of the character. As for my personal take, Halloween is a film that I appreciated more with a rewatch. Initially, I was struck by the raw brutality and the departure from Carpenter's minimalist approach. But over time, I recognized some of the complexities. Zombies' take on Michael Myers is a far cry from the supernatural force of evil we knew, but there's a tragic depth to his boldness, to hit this version that makes him far more sympathetic and tragic of a character. The film's boldness in addressing trauma, violence, and the dark underbelly of suburban life gives it a unique place in the slasher genre, even if it's not perfect. It's a visceral experience, and one that doesn't shy away from showing the ugly truth of what creates a monster. But I think that could have been done in a new slasher with a new character, new villains, new heroines. Just take the idea and do your own, rather than rehashing something that worked so well to begin with. So who should watch Halloween? Well, if you're a hardcore horror fan, particularly one who revels in films that challenge conventions, push boundaries, and blend violence and social commentary, then this is going to be a must-watch for you, because the film doesn't shy away from confronting dark, uncomfortable subjects. And its brutality offers a stark contrast to the more restrained horror experience we're used to seeing. If you appreciate grindhouse aesthetics, where the violence is raw and gritty, and enjoy diving into psychological complexities that fuel monstrous behavior, this reimagining of Michael Myers may likely strike a chord with you. Zombie's signature style, filled with chaos, nihilism, and a touch of grotesque humor, offers a fresh, brutal perspective on the Halloween mythos. However, this is not the typical Halloween film that you may be accustomed to. So if you're a first-time viewer stepping into Zombie's vision of Haddonfield, be prepared for a shift in tone. This movie is darker, more grounded, and more character-driven than Carpenter's original. Gone is the haunting suspense that made the original so iconic. In its place is a film that leans heavily into violent confrontations, family trauma, and the psychological unraveling of a broken mind. It's less about the slow burn tension of a stalking slasher, and more about exploring the painful origins of Myers' monstrous behavior. Set your expectations to a more visceral, gritty experience, and if you're willing to accept this stark departure from what you might expect from a Halloween film, you'll likely come away with a greater appreciation for this darker and in times more complex iteration of the story. For those looking for a traditional, suspense-driven horror experience where the tension builds slowly and the dread is in the atmosphere, you'll find yourself at odds with Zombie's approach. The film's reliance on overt violence and trauma will feel overwhelming, and it might not resonate as deeply if you prefer the subtlety of Carpenter's original. While it certainly has its moments of tension, it's more in your face and less about the creeping fear that made Michael Myers so terrifying in the first place. My final recommendation: Halloween earns a 6 out of 10. It's better than average. It's a bold, violent reimagining of a classic story. And it doesn't achieve the same level of impact or suspense as Carpenter's original. It offers a fresh perspective on Myers and his origins. And fans of Zombie's work will appreciate his distinct style, while those looking for a darker, more character-focused take on Halloween will find plenty to enjoy. However, if you're like me and you're more drawn to a traditional suspense-driven horror, this may not be your cup of tea. Still, it's definitely worth checking out if you're open to a new interpretation of a beloved slasher icon. In short, Halloween is a film that challenges expectations, but in doing so, it provides an experience that's uniquely zombie, with moments of brilliance for those willing to embrace its grittier, more violent edge. So what did you think of Rob Zombie's Halloween? Did you find yourself drawn to his grittier, more brutal take on Michael Myers? Or do you prefer the classic, slow-burning terror of John Carpenter's original? Whether you're a fan of Zombie's darker approach, Or if you're more of a purist when it comes to the Halloween franchise, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Join the conversation on social media. Let's debate, discuss, and dig in to what makes these films so compelling or controversial, depending on where you stand. Your opinions matter, and I'm always up for a lively debate. Next time on Real Talk Horror, we'll be exploring Halloween 2, where Rob Zombie doubles down on his vision for Michael Myers in the Halloween franchise. If you thought his first take was intense, get ready for an emotional roller coaster and sheer chaos that brings Halloween 2 to the table. Trust me, this sequel's not for the faint of heart, and it's going to be a wild ride that you won't want to miss. So thank you for joining me on this deep dive into Halloween by Rob Zombie. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button to stay up to date on everything Real Talk Horror. I've got a ton more terrifying takes, genre-bending analyses, and hidden gems and spine-tingling discussions coming your way. And come and see us on Instagram and Threads at Real Talk. Drop us an email at therealrealtalk@gmail.com. We'd love to keep talking with you. Until next time, keep it spooky and keep the lights on, and we'll catch you next time.
Creeping through the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape. Shadows play a twisted game. Fear and terror stake their claim. Footsteps follow close behind. Haunting thoughts invade your mind. Run away, but they won't go. In the darkness, fear will grow. Midnight shadows come to play. In your dreams, they'll always stay. Windows rattle, doors they creak. Ghostly whispers start to speak. Every corner hides a fear. Close your eyes, they're drawing near. Candles flicker, spirits call. In the night they'll take it all. Midnight strikes, the clocks rewind. Nightmares now are intertwined. Run away, but they won't go. In the darkness, fear will grow. Midnight shadows come to play. In your dreams, they'll always stay.